Here with Jacob Calvin Meyer from the Baltimore Sun, and we are talking a sad Orioles day in the eyes of fans across Baltimore. A disappointing loss, specifically on the heels of an unbelievable Corbin Burnes outing. What did you see from the pitcher today? And more specifically, what didn't you see from the Orioles bats on the other side?
Yeah, the Orioles traded for Corbin Burnes in the beginning of February for this exact purpose, so that he could go out in game one of a playoff series and pitch the way that he did today. If you would have said on the day that they traded him, February 1st, that he would throw 8 innings of one-run ball in game one of their first playoff series in October, and that they would lose 1-0, that would have been shocking and disappointing, just as much so as it is right now. He had his way with Kansas City's lineup. The only mistake really being the fact that he walked Michael Garcia, the number 9 hitter, who's hitting 200 but is a great base stealer, in the sixth inning. And he stole second base, went to third on the ground out, and then scored on a soft Bobby Witt single, which was the deciding factor for the Orioles offense. It was something that we saw a lot in the second half. Struggles with runners in scoring position, 1 for 7 in those situations. Nobody able to come through with the clutch hit. Obviously, you have to give Kansas City's pitchers their credit. They were outstanding, especially Cole Ragans, the starting pitcher who went 6 innings. But this team's been searching offensively to get that big hit, and they weren't able to do it on Tuesday.
Jacob, what's your take? One thing I noticed that immediately jumped out to me was Cedric Mullins double off the wall, no outs, man on second. What's your take on Brandon Hyde's lack of willingness to play a little small ball in the moments that matter most when you really need a run? Why not bunt there, do you think?
Yeah, there was a couple situations where James McCann actually could have bunted, one early in the game, and then one later when, if you want to talk about mistakes, the biggest mistake made in the game was by Kansas City left fielder MJ Melendez when he overran a fly ball and then tried to backtrack, and it was slippery and he fell down. That led to a Ramon Arias double. Then Cedric Mullins singled. It's first and third, 1 out. And typically in a 1-0 game, the team that makes the biggest mistake loses that game. But with guys on first and third, McCann's up. He strikes out on 3 pitches. And then Ragans goes and strikes out Gunnar Henderson on 5 pitches. So in the first situation, I think it's tough early in a game when you don't know what the game's going to turn out to look like, whether it's going to be a low scoring game. I know we figured it would be because of how great the starting pitchers were, but it's tough to give away out there in that situation. Later in the game, I think in a lot of those scenarios, we saw it last year with veterans like O'Hearn and Frazier and McCann, that Hyde leaves it up to those guys. If they think that they can get a bunt down, if they're confident in that, if that's what they want to do, he leaves that decision up to them. James McCann obviously wanted to swing away. And one factor to consider there is that Ramon Arias, who already isn't a fast runner in the first place, was the guy on third base. If you lay down a bunt there, it's a safety squeeze. He's not going to be running on the pitch. He has a bum ankle. He sprained his ankle in late August. He came back quickly from that ankle sprain. And so you've got already somebody who's pretty slow with a bad ankle running towards home. And it's just obviously something that at the moment James McCann didn't want to do. But when you lose a game 1-0 and you don't small ball it, those are decisions that are going to be questioned after the game.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And now on the game two, back against the wall. Since 2022, the stat is glaring. 8 for 8 teams who win game one in the wild card best of three go on to the divisional round. How do the Orioles turn it around? Is there hope? Obviously, yes, there's hope. You just got to one game at a time. But what do the Orioles have to do to, number one, win tomorrow, and number two, build momentum with the bats?
Yeah, they got to score some runs. You can't win if you don't score. Listen, the stat is glaring, but it's a small sample size, only 2 years of that stat, which is in the wild card series since 2022, where they would change to a 3-game series. No team that's lost game one has gone on to win the series. In fact, only one of those 8 series even went 3 games. The momentum here is real. It's tough to overcome. But one thing to keep in mind is we saw last year this team lose a 1-run game to Texas in game one of the ALDS and then they got steamrolled in games 2 and 3. They completely lost the momentum, and Texas was, for those games and for the rest of the postseason, the best team in baseball. That is not the situation here. You never know what's going to happen in the postseason. So I could look pretty dumb here in a couple weeks. This Kansas City team is not winning the World Series. They have 5 hitters. The bottom 5 hitters in the order have OPS is below 700. They've got a good starting staff. They have a couple good relievers, and they have Bobby Witt. But this team is not capable of going on a run. And so the good thing here for the Orioles is that they're the better team. They should win this series. It was no doubt before today, and there's no doubt about it going into game 2. And so it's not the same thing as being down 2-0 in a 5-game series or being down 3-0 in a 7-game series. All you got to do is win game 2, which is easier said than done. But if you win game 2, Zach Eflin pitches well, you get a couple big hits, you go into game 3 against a team that you're better than, and then all bets are off. And so you win game 2, they're probably going to be favored to win game 3. But considering that the Orioles have lost 9 straight playoff games, going back all the way to 2014 under the previous regime, which is the longest active streak in Major League Baseball and tied for 6th longest in MLB history, I think there's a lot of Orioles fans that are probably feeling a woe is me attitude right now. And the only people who can change that is the 9 guys that are in the lineup and Zach Eflin. So we'll see what game 2 has in store.
Yeah, and real quick before we let you go, could you do a little preview, a little breakdown? Seth Lugo, Zach Eflin, what to expect?
Yeah, Seth Lugo is a veteran, somebody who has postseason experience. Actually, I think one of the more interesting things about this Kansas City team is the fact that they were a rebuilding team. They lost 106 games last year, and they went out this offseason instead of saying, "Hey, let's have a grueling, long rebuild where we just grow the prospects on the farm system." They went out and spent money, and they got veteran players like a Seth Lugo, thinking that, hey, we can, with 3 wildcard teams, we can go out and make a run. We can go out and upset a team like Baltimore in the wildcard series. Seth Lugo can help us get there. And so he's somebody that the Orioles have seen earlier this season. I believe that matchup went pretty well for Baltimore. But so that's the Seth Lugo side. On the Eflin side, it's kind of the same deal, which is the Orioles went out and got this guy at the deadline, hoping that he would fortify a rotation that's dealt with a lot of injuries with Bradish and Means and Wells, and now Grayson Rodriguez is injured too. And so Eflin's been great for this team, and he's somebody that has postseason experience. He's pitched in the World Series for the Phillies. And so you've got 2 veterans, 2 steady guys who both teams think that they can probably ride. And one slight positive for the Orioles is that they didn't have to use really many of their top bullpen arms. Yanier Cano, for example, CNL Perez did not pitch in game 1. And so whereas Kansas City pitched really all of their top bullpen guys. So that maybe gives Baltimore a slight edge in game 2.
All right, Jacob, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate you greatly as always.
Thanks for having me.